so we're now in the first week of March. Where's the time going? Okay, so I thought this week we will look at the taste comparison of my 3 Glen Dronachs. I have the Traditionally Peated, one of my favourites. I have the Batch 10 cask strength from last year. And we have the Batch 11, that was this year. The reason why we're doing this comparative tasting is people got the impression in my review that I didn't like it. And I liked it fine, but I don't think it was as good as the others. So I thought I'd do a taste comparison. Maybe I was just having an off week. Just to see how they compare to each other. So I thought I would check my complete guide to whiskey, well, somewhat-ish complete guide to whiskey. And Glen Dronach, a Speyside whiskey, near Huntly, Aberdeenshire. It was established in 1826, and it's owned by Allied Domecq. Okay, to get some idea what Univer's House's latest distillery, Balbert, looks like, just pop along to Ardmore. It's some drive away, but now you're reaching the outer limits of Speyside, where distilleries are few and far between. Not only are entering what has to be the most attractive of all the lands regarded as Speyside, but you are now stepping into Teacher's Country. On the way to Cannock Mount, take a slight detour off the A97 and into the rolling hills of the Glen Dronach. The famous old distillery of that name awaits you there, though at the moment all is quiet. When I first began looking into the mysteries of Scotch whisky some 22 years ago, I remember a distiller calling Glen Dronach a Bank of Scotland distillery. In other words, it was safe, one that would never close. The reason that it had been bought by Teachers in 1960 to produce the malt needed to put into the Teachers, or exchange for other malts that could accompany it. But in 1976, Teachers approached Allied, asking Allied to take them over. Allied duly accepted. Since then, Glen Dronach has not been anything like as important, and in 1996, to mark its 170th year, it was mothballed, much to the surprise of many in the industry. Its location, snuggling into the glen and with red high Highland cattle feeding at its front, makes it one of Scotland's more attractive places to visit. That, plus the fact that you used to be able to see the maltings marked by its strangely oblong Bengola in full flow, but no longer, although there is plenty of its malt around. In the early 1990s, it offered a choice between original and matured in sherry casks. Both were 12 years old, and the original included just enough sherry to add to the subtlest hint of fruit. One hands down is a quite superb, multifaceted dram. Those 2 whiskies are now gone, replaced by the traditional, also its 12-year-old, but 2 sherry-dominated dry and highly impressive of all. The 1968 Glen Dronach that has been bought out has a much cleaner sherry character, but the pick of the bunch is the Glen Dronach 19-year-old. Again, the vatters have gone sherry mad, and this time, though, there is a thumping peaty character to show the malt, and constituent parts are alive and kicking. This replaced the 18-year-old, which was also so sherry-dominated and thick that it was impossible to discern anything else, and made for one of the worst drams I've ever encountered. Even so, one can only hope that the silencing of the Glen Dronach stills is a temporary phenomenon. There will be no finer sight than seeing the raw malt sprint dancing into the two spirit safes, standing side by side and built with great pride and generation apart from father and son. Okay, so this reviewer is not a fan of the sherry bomb. But anyway, we shall proceed. So let's start with the Batch 11. So like I said, it's got that nice amber, slightly amber, goldish colour to it. I'm going to have to say the sherry is very obvious on the nose. I'm getting a lot of dried fruits, a hint of vanilla, a bit of citrus, bit of orange, Okay, so by smell-wise, this is not a terribly bad whiskey, but like I said, I think what's disappointing to me was I'm used to the traditionally peated Glen Dronachs, and I was expecting a much more smoky smell. So I think it's more of a case of just wasn't quite what I was expecting. Okay, pick up some lot of dry fruits. Definitely some orange zest sort of taste to it. It's very sweet. It's almost like a caramel or a molasses sort of taste. It's got like a thickness to it. It's definitely got a woody flavour, but it's probably from the oak. Maybe a slight nut flavour, walnut maybe, or almond. And again, I'm not picking up what I was expecting in that sort of smokiness. But that said, this is a perfectly nice whiskey. Yeah, so I don't dislike this. I really quite like this, but I think it was just more I was expecting something else, and just this is what I got. Nothing wrong with it. I suppose that's the problem when you go in, when you know these, you start knowing these whiskies, you start expecting certain flavours. So when you try something new from the distillery, and it's slightly different characteristics to what you're expecting, it's not so much disappointed, but you know what I mean. Anyway, it's quite nice. Okay, so that was the batch 11. So let's try the batch 10. Did I imagine the peaty overture to this particular dram? Okay, so we have, I would say, a much darker amber sort of colour. I want to compare the two, and side by side, yeah, it's a little darker, not dramatically so, but it's a little bit darker. Okay, so this one is not as sweet. The sherry seems to be a little bit more subdued in it, just on the nose. I'm picking up your usual zesty flavour, the smells. Yeah, it's less raisiny, fruitcake-like smell, more dark cherries and citrus. But I'm going to admit, I'm not picking up the peat in this one either, based on the smell. So let's give it a taste. Okay, so definitely picking up the citrus-like. Definitely hints of cherry. The peat's not there, so I did imagine when coming into the batch 11 that I had tasted peat on the batch 10. Oh no, hang on. Slight peaty aftertaste. It just sort of hit my palate. Okay, so I didn't completely imagine it, but it's not what I was expecting it from the start. This is not as sweet as the batch 11, and that's probably why I prefer. I'm not really a sweet tooth person. The sherry's much more subtle in this one, and again, I'm not really a sherry drinker, so that maybe it was a bit too much sherry in the batch 11. But overall, batch 11 was nice. I prefer the batch 10. But let's get into the peat bomb. So, much lighter colour than the other two. This one's much more golden, less of the amber. As you can see. There's that peat. Yeah. Okay, I'm picking up the citrus, caramel, a whole lot of peat. Yep. This is hands down my favourite. I'm sorry, it's the peat. The peat makes it. Sorry, Mel. I know you don't like the peat, but... Okay, so citrusy, not as spicy as the Batch 11. Not as sweet. Probably actually a bit more simple. There's not whole complex flavors like the nuts, the molasses that I was tasting in Batch 11, or even to a more subtle degree in the Batch 10. But it's got that beat. Okay, so that's my comparative tastings. Guess I'll have to clean up here now. Yeah. Okay, and so until maybe next week might be delivery week. We'll see how we go. But until then, Sante.